after 1, we'll get the meeting started for March 26th Utility Finance Oversight Committee. Call the meeting to order. We're slightly late today because we have a little technical difficulty. We hopefully get caught up on the fly. Kathy, if I could get a roll call.
Vice Chairperson Bennett.
Here.
Member Bowling.
Here.
Member Maples. Member Johnston.
Here.
Member Scott.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you, Kathy. At this time, I'll open it up to public comment. The public is invited to make comment and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Utility Finance Oversight Committee, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda. As an action item, no action may be taken on a matter raised under public comment unless the item has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. So with that, I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment. And we'll move on to item number 1, approval of the meeting minutes. And item 1A, we have possible action, discussion and possible action regarding approval of November 27th, 2018 draft meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Yes? All 2 of us that were here at that last meeting? With that, I'll take... do I do a motion? I can take a motion and public comment after the motion. Okay, I'll take a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
I would move the approval of the minutes of November 27th, 2018, as presented.
Thank you. I have first from Bruce. Second?
Second.
Second from Randy. Now I'll open up for public comment on the meeting minutes. Hearing none, I'll close the public comment. I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? None.
Chairman, I will abstain, not having been here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And then I will abstain as well because I was not at that meeting either. So that moves us on to item 2A, which is discussion and possible action regarding electing a chairperson and a vice chairperson.
Chairman, before we move on, with two of you abstaining, I'm not sure that's really a majority approving the minutes. You have two out of 4 people approving the minutes. If there's any way that that one of the 2 of you that weren't there can approve the minutes, so we can have 3 of 4 people approving the minutes. That way we can make sure the minutes are approved. And at this point, I'll also give you a comment about abstaining. Generally, I understand that you weren't there. But generally, it's your duty not to abstain and to vote one way or the other on whatever's come before you. I realize that in general, with things that you weren't there at the meeting for, it's difficult to give a wholehearted endorsement of the minutes. But I'd still like you to say that at the very least you can review them and qualify your vote, saying you've reviewed them and don't see any errors.
Well, with that statement then, I did not watch the video, but I did review the minutes, and I didn't take any issue with any of the items presented, so I will change my vote to an aye.
Thank you.
Back on to 2A? Okay. Darren, do I turn this over to you, or do I keep a hold of this one?
Generally, you keep a hold of it,
Oh, good deal.
but I'll help you if you need to.
Okay. Actually, you know what? One of the things I meant to do after roll call and I missed it. Can we get just an introduction from staff, please? And I apologize for pausing right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I'm Darren Schultz, the Public Works Director.
My name's Todd Reese. I'm your Deputy DA.
Andy Hummel, Wastewater Utility Manager.
I'm Sherry Russell. I'm the CFO, and I'd like to point out Jamie Stevenson. She's our accounting manager. She's also in finance.
Pam Ganger, Deputy CFO.
Eddie Qualieri, Water Utility Manager.
Thank you, everyone, for that. So, again, sorry, we'll go back to 2A for the third time. Third time's a charm on this one. Sorry. I'll open it up for discussion on electing, well, I guess we'll do a chairperson first. Bruce?
Yeah, Mike, with changes here in our leadership, I guess I would suggest that we consider your elevation from vice chairman to chairman, and I would so move.
I appreciate that, Bruce, and I accept the nomination.
Second.
A second by Randy. Open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote on that. All's in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? A 4-0. So then with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion on electing a vice chairperson.
Well, as long as I have a finger on the button, I would nominate Randy Bowling as a continuing member of the committee for vice chairman.
I would second that nomination.
Randy, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
We have a nomination and a second. Open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? None. 4-0.
My compliments on your trigger finger.
Okay, well, that moves us on to item 2B, which is discussion and possible action on selection of Friends in Service Helping, otherwise known as FISH, as a third-party administrator for the Utility Ratepayer Assistance Program, and award of the Utility Ratepayer Assistance Program third-party administrator contract to FISH for 5% of the donations received for ratepayer assistance. Sherry, this got your name on it.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Sherry Russell. And so first off, I wanted to discuss the utility ratepayer program just a little bit for everybody. So our municipal code used to include a senior citizens program for utility rate assistance. And they had to be below a certain level of income and that sort of thing. As of December 6, 2018, the municipal code changed to include the new URAP program. And that provides assistance to all residents based on the federal poverty guidelines. So it's also based on donations. So we're going to solicit donations from those who are financially well off to contribute to the program and then pass those on to those less fortunate. So what we're doing today is looking at a third-party administrator to handle all of the applications that we're going to receive, and then do the calculations to determine how much we would then pay out. We reached out to several nonprofits. We only heard from two. We heard from Ron Wood Family Resource Center and FISH. Staff is recommending FISH today. Simply because they're very, very experienced. They handle Nevada Energy and Southwest Gas. And they also agreed to the 5% out of that donation amount as payment. So we would ask that you approve that third-party administrator.
Thank you, Sherry. Bring it back to the board for any questions or discussions. Bruce?
Yeah, a couple questions. It sounds like the 5% is at the lower end of what some of these folks would like to get, and I realize that's the way that it's been set up. The initial effort appears like it's heavy on the involvement without compensation in effect as far as getting this program started. So I would hope that FISH would be in a position where they could see the benefits of what's undoubtedly going to be some upfront investment of time and effort before we start seeing any kind of revenue. Because if I read this correctly, the revenue doesn't occur when the donations are made. The revenue occurs when the bill is offset. So they could build a pot of donations, but not get any revenue until they actually have people taking advantage of the program.
That's correct. I believe that the contract I just looked at said in February, we determine how much we have in donations. We let FISH know, we take 5% off the top as their payment, and then the remaining is what they distribute based on the applications received.
Is there, I mean, I see we have some literature or some flyer type material in here. Is it actually collecting any money at this point, or is that still based on?
We had a board member who, to get this program up and running and going, contributed $1,000. So that'll
great.
be our first year of running this program.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We had a board member that was very generous and contributed $1,000 to the program just to get it off the ground and going.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions or discussions? Randy?
I got some. Sherry, what's the, I know that there's an agreement that's included in the package with Fish. What's the term of the agreement?
I don't know that we have a term.
This is Todd
Okay.
Reese for the record. I can answer that question. And the agreement was designed to be for 3 years, and then it can be renewed for successive terms of, 4 successive terms of another 3 years. So if it ran to its end, it would be for a term of 15 years, I believe. There are options to continue it after every 3 years, and there's also a term in there allowing the city or Fish to terminate the agreement at any time.
Thank you. Randy, go ahead.
One other question is, not that we're talking a lot of money here, but is this subject to audit?
Well, everything the city does is subject to audit, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And if I can jump in on that one too, there is a term in the agreement that allows the city to request the information that is held by the third-party administrator for purposes of auditing it or verifying information about various ratepayers or whatever else the information may need to be requested for.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions by the committee? Seeing none, I'll open it up or entertain.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we continue on to a motion, let me request that the committee modify the motion that's presented in your packet. The agreement that was given to you as part of your packet was completed yesterday or early this morning and is a little bit rough around the edges. We've been getting comments back on it from the treasurer and Sherry, our CFO, and as well as some supervisors. And I also need to meet with Fish and make sure that they are agreeable to the agreement. The URAP ordinance permits the city to enter into the agreement. It doesn't specifically mention that the UFOC, this committee, has to enter into the agreement. So with your motion, we would request, or I would request that you approve, if that's your desire, to approve Fish as the third-party administrator, but then to direct the Director of Public Works to enter into a contract with Fish as soon as possible.
I appreciate that feedback. I guess question that I would have is, are we the voting authority, or is it ultimately the Board of Supervisors? Are we recommending an approval by the Board of Supervisors?
Since we're only paying $50 and we don't expect it to be much more in the next couple years, we expect it to take a while to ramp up. If it's over, I think 25 or 50,000, we have to go to the Board of Supervisors, but no, this would be way too small.
Okay, so this stops here, so to
Yes.
speak. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So with that understanding then, would the committee like to make a motion?
Well, yeah, in light of our newly identified authority, I would, I guess, thank Fish for taking the time to make to work on this and to potentially be willing to accept the administration of this program, which I think is very important. And I would move, Mr. Chairman, that we authorize the Public Works Director to complete with Fish and the appropriate city entities a formal agreement and execute it on behalf of the city for this URAP program.
Thank you for that motion, Member Scott. Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I make sure you guys are talking about fish? Because I didn't hear fish in the motion. Sorry.
It was there, it was just quiet.
Okay.
No, I would clarify the motion to specifically name Fish as the entity to whom or with whom the contract would be entered.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob, does your second still stand?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you for that. With a motion and a second, I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And I will ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 4-0. So with that, then, we're moving on to 2C. And I apologize, let me get there. So this is a discussion and possible action regarding approval of the program application created by Friends in Service Helping, otherwise known as FISH, as the third-party administrator for the Utility Ratepayer Assistance Program.
Thank you, Mr.
Sherry,
Chair.
that's you as well?
It is.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chair. So Fish and the DA's office, we all work together to make sure that this is in compliance with all the ordinances and has everything necessary for them to do their job and review the applications. So this is the application. We've also included a letter that Public Works will send to the current the current people that are receiving the assistance, the older assistance program.
If I could interrupt you for 1 second, there was 3 bits of late material that came in. When you're talking about the letter, that's the I'm going to call it a flyer. It looks like a flyer, the Utility Ratepayer Assistance Program in blue across the top.
No, that is going to be a leaflet put into every single utility bill.
Okay.
Encouraging people to contribute to this program, to donate to this program. There was a letter included, I don't believe that was late material. There was a letter included in the original material from Public Works saying, yeah, this is basically letting the people in the older program know that that's no longer in existence, that we have this new program and that they need to apply for it, kind of. And then the application, and I believe the application was late material as well. So we were just looking for any guidance or changes you guys wanted to see on the application. I do believe that this fits the ordinance. DA's office agrees it does address everything in the ordinance. So we just wanted to give you guys a look at what we were sending out to ratepayers, since you're the UFOC, and get any feedback from you.
And I apologize if I'm a little behind the 8 ball. There was also a bit of late material that came out this morning for the agreement. That's part of this agenda item as well? That was
I
the
believe
prior
the
agenda
contract,
item.
yeah, that was the prior agenda.
The contract was a part of the prior agenda, but
Okay,
if
okay. With that, I got some interest up here. Bob, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. Sherry, I had a question about this letter, notification letter to people currently receiving the discount. And there's a statement in there that the state discontinued a prior program several years ago, and that the city has continued to honor your discount to date. I don't have any sense of scale. How many current residents are on that discount?
I believe we have 80 residents, about 69, I'm sorry. 69 residents on this program.
And how has that been funded?
It's just a discount right off the top.
So
The
that's
city
not-
has provided that
The
discount.
city has provided. And I noticed it's a fairly short time transition window between discontinuance of that program and the start of the new one, are there going to be sufficient funds available to make sure that people currently receiving the discount will be able to continue receiving the discount come July 1?
Their discount will change. I'm not sure exactly what that change will be until we do the math and we see what their application with our new program yields, because our new program is based on the poverty level and not just an income amount. I believe it's also been several years since the 69 people in our old program were actually reviewed to see what their income level is today.
But I guess my question is there a possibility that the city wouldn't have the funds from this new dedicated funding source?
No,
That
so
there'd be a waiting list for some of those people who could otherwise be eligible?
yeah, the new program is 100% donation funded. If we don't have the donation, it's on a first come, first served basis.
So there's a possibility come July 1, some of these people who have been receiving discounts will no longer get it.
They may not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Bruce?
That concerns me a bit because we potentially have some folks here who may be of lesser means and possibly lesser direct involvement. And I would hope that through the outreach that the letter represents and maybe publicity, certainly, the senior center can be a help, maybe the library, but I would hate to see any of our citizens who were needy somehow get caught in what to them would be the bureaucratic adjustment. And so I would, I guess, encourage staff to reach out as much as possible and try to make sure that we don't lose anybody in the transition here, because the people we would tend to lose would probably be the people least able to afford it.
Well, and this letter is specifically going out to the people that are on the older program. And with this letter will be a copy of the application so they can apply right away.
It seems to me that the concern is not as much making sure the folks that are on it now get the info that there is a change to it. The concern is perhaps that there needs to be a funding source. We're putting the flyer in the utility bill, which is good, but I suppose Fish needs to recognize, and I'm sure they do, that there needs to be some other promotion of this, that there needs to be some donations made to the program.
Are we putting it on the website? I'm pretty sure we're gonna put it on the website. When we implement Tyler and those utility bills come out, we'll have a mechanism right in that bill where they can check a box and give us some money for the utility bill. So make it a lot easier. Now with this flyer, you have to send a separate check for that program because our old system isn't capable of splitting money out that way, but the new system will be. So as this program grows, I think it will meet the needs of the community. I just think it might take a little time to get there.
Darren Schultz for the record. I think you're asking all the right questions, and the concern is appropriate. As of June 30th, 69 people who have been receiving a discount will no longer receive a discount, and they will have to enter this new process. And their discount will be based off of donations that are there and available. And it's right around this program, right around funds about $60,000 worth of subsidies. So that's the number that we're talking about with these individuals. Now, because this program is no longer monitored by the state and the city, we've been honoring it, but not necessarily monitoring it through the assessor's treasurer's office. Before, they were required to come every year and present documentation that they met those qualifications. We haven't done that process for 4 years now. And so there's a good chance that a number of people that are receiving the 69 that would no longer qualify anyway, we've been told that that list would be culled down considerably, but what you're asking is accurate in terms of what's going to happen come June 30th of this year with this program. So we will notify them, send the letter, take phone calls, direct them, try and help them through the new process. But just kind of doing the math, we're going to expect that we hope that those people on that current list that are most in need would get carried over into the new program. I mean, that's the goal of all of this. But it's not just for seniors anymore, it's for the low income.
Well, this is the right way to go. I mean, I recall a presentation probably about this time last year where we recognized that it wasn't appropriate for the city to be funding that anymore. It wasn't being monitored, like, as you said, by the state anymore. And there was a grassroots effort, I guess, to have a nonprofit step up and fund it. So that's where we're at today, and it's the right thing to do. We just have to, we as a community have to be cognizant that it needs to be funded, I guess, is the point. I guess that's all I have to say on that. Is there any other comments or questions by the committee? Bruce?
Just one other question. What is 200% of the federal poverty rate? Do we know what that number is?
I didn't look that up. I'm sorry.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I will look it up and let you know.
Thank you.
Any others? One more time. Hearing none, I'll go back to staff and ask, is there anything else to add, Sherry? No?
Nothing else.
With that, then, I will, this is an action item, so I will entertain a motion.
Mr.
Randy?
Chairman, I move to approve the program application created by Friends and Service Helping, otherwise known as FISH, as the third-party administrator of the Utility Ratepayer Assistance Program.
Thank you, Randy. I have a motion by Member Bowling. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Scott. I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, close public comment, and I'll bring it back for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion passes 4-0. And that takes us on to item number 2D, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry to do this to you, but if we could take a short recess, we have some technology experts here to help us get going for this next portion. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes is what they're suggesting, and we'll be back.
Sounds good to me. I saw screens flash and I thought we had it. Okay, thank you. We'll go to recess.
Thank you.
We left off just before item 2D, which is discussion and possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2020 wastewater fund budget compliance with adopted financial policies, and recommended the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative wastewater fund budget for fiscal year 2020. Pamela?
Thank you, Pam Ganger, Deputy CFO. First, I'd like to give credit where credit is due. Jamie Stevenson sitting in the audience, as well as Cindy Mills, who works in Public Works, do the majority of the heavy lifting when it comes to putting this budget together. So I just wanted to recognize those two for the hard work. I will just real quickly let you know that in your packets, you'll find an overview that's similar to what you received this time last year, which is you're getting the documents that are similar to what the board receives. The state forms are the first two forms, and then the financial summary and the personnel detail, and then the capital 5-year plan. So I just wanted to let you know that those are what the board sees as well, the Board of Supervisors. And I'm just going to go over the highlights and then answer any questions that you have. So first is the wastewater fund. In the operating revenue, we have we budgeted no increases in the service revenue just because the rates are the same. So we've did not include any rate increases. The fiscal year 2020 will be the fourth year out of 5 for the phase-in of the connection charge increase. In salaries and benefits, we saw an increase in fiscal 2020 over 19, an estimated $252,000. And that's primarily driven by an increase in merits on benefits, employee benefits. In services and supplies, I apologize, I did not get late material out to you. Just this morning, I actually came across an error. I was puzzling over why internal service charges were higher than what they should be. And I discovered an error in an input error, and it caused the number that was showing for internal service charges to be overstated by about $300,000. So the actual number for internal service charges is $300 less than what we're showing. So on here, on my slide here, where I say that my services and supplies increased by $76,700, it actually did not increase. It decreased by a total of $230 or $230,000 and from 2019 estimated. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here, but the services and supplies there did not increase by $76,000. They actually decreased by $230,000. And the primary reason is that the internal service charges did not increase, they decreased by approximately $173,000. So that line up there is incorrect, and I just didn't have the time to get late material out to you for that. So that's good news. And professional services, we saw a decrease of $200,000. Maintenance and repairs, we had an increase of approximately $145,000. And in the capital outlay plan for fiscal 2020 is about $3.4 million. Attached is a capital plan worksheet. And if you have any specific questions about the capital plan, I'll refer you to our Public Works friends. This slide here shows our planned capital expenditures over the next 5 years. So as you can see, we have about $20,000 projected in capital spending over the next 5 years.
20 million.
I'm sorry, what? There, thank you, $20 million. Okay. On to the financial policies. This slide shows you where we've been and where we are projecting our estimated 2019 numbers to come in, and then our projected 2020 numbers compared to what we actually saw in 2016, 2017, and 2018. So our operating reserve goal is $900,000, and we should easily meet that. Our capital reserve goal, which is based on a percentage of capital assets, is $2.1 million. And for fiscal 2020, we are expecting to have about 4.9. Actually, that number changed since since I corrected that error on the internal service charges. So it's actually about $300,000 higher than that. Our debt to equity ratio goal is 50-50, and we are projecting in 2020 a ratio of 45-55, and that should correct itself over the next few years as we pay down the debt service on our bonds. And we expected to see this ratio not falling into compliance just because of the bonds that we have outstanding that we took out in 2018. So our debt service coverage is the last financial policy here, and we had a goal of 1, and we easily meet that with 1.7. So with the exception of the debt to equity ratio, actually our debt to equity ratio is correct. It's 45-55. So it is actually the policy that we do. This is the one fund where we actually do meet our policy. Sorry, I'm confusing myself with the other funds. We have, in the debt to equity ratio, our debt was 45-55 equity. So apologize for that misstatement. So the wastewater fund, we meet all of our financial policies. So hopefully that's clear as mud now, right? Okay.
This slide, I think, says it all. Thank you for that, Pam.
Yes, okay.
I do have a question on the debt to equity ratio.
Yes.
Any of the system reinvestment, are we planning to take on debt to pay for that? And if we do, is it going to be offsetting other debt that's being paid off, or are we going to be increasing that ratio? Or we say it a different way, changing the ratio from in a negative manner, let's say.
We don't have any other planned debt coming forward that I know of in the wastewater fund. So this should be it for a while. So we'll just be paying down our debt, and our debt to equity ratio will just continue to improve over time. But it's looking good at 45-55 right now anyway.
Can I say something real quick? Sorry, Sherry Russell, CFO. I just want to point out that the wastewater fund is actually our sewer fund. We'll be renaming that. The board has not quite yet approved it. However, it will be going to the next meeting on April 4th, where we expect it to be approved, so.
So with that change, it's just simply a change in name, or are we changing
Yes,
any? Okay,
it's just it'll be the wastewater utility fund.
thank you. Sounds much better than sewer.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, I believe that the documents were going to be changed so that each of the funds then said water utility fund and stormwater utility fund and wastewater utility fund. So there will be that change in each of the funds. And thank you for mentioning that. I didn't bring that up earlier, I forgot. So that's all I have on the wastewater fund, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Thank you, Pam, for that. With that, I'll bring it back to the committee for any questions or comments. I see none. We're meeting our goals. That's a positive thing. Then I will go back to staff. Darren?
My only comment is on the capital both the managers for water, wastewater, and stormwater, when they get to managers' report, they'll kind of talk about the capital plans for next year. We weren't going to cover it under this financial item. Just FYI, it's still coming.
Thank you for that, Darren. With that, then, I guess we'd be looking for a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors.
Question.
Go ahead, Randy.
If I remember right, when we put together our schedule for meetings, this meeting was dedicated to a tentative budget. So will the budget come before this committee again in May?
Yes, in May, I believe we are scheduled to present the final budget or any changes that occurred between this budget and the final budget, which hopefully there won't be too many, but there may be some.
So what's the
Always a few.
what's the purpose of a motion now? Any action?
I believe the purpose now is to recommend this to the Board of Supervisors.
To recommend a tentative budget?
Yeah, we file the tentative budget is due to the state on April 15th. And that is, we present that budget on April 18th to the Board of Supervisors. On April 18th, the Board of Supervisors will also be looking at the supplemental request, the capital improvement plan. So they'll look at this first draft of the UFOs, of this utility funds budgets. So the idea is to make sure you guys have a good idea of where the budget is now, and then we'll come back with the few little changes that will happen in May. We have to meet in May 20th with the Board of Supervisors to ratify the final budget, and that may fall before we meet with you guys next.
Randy, when we call this the tentative budget, from staff's perspective, it's our final budget going forward to you and to the Board of Supervisors. But we can't call it a final budget until it's approved by them. So it's the only tentative part about it is it hasn't been approved by the Board of Supervisors. So we're not going to make a bunch of changes to it. If they do, that's what we would bring back to you in May and spell out what was changed, just so you were made aware. This is your only opportunity to comment or ask for changes or suggestions on fiscal 20 budget, is this meeting.
And historically, the last couple years, when we present the tentative budget and any changes to the Board of Supervisors, you guys would recommend approval, and then we would let the board know of any little tweaks we made between now and when we present that tentative budget.
Thank you.
Member Scott?
Yeah, the way I understand our responsibility, it is to review this and give the board our recommendation on the tentative budget. And so I think, to me, Randy, this is our more critical time rather than our less critical time in terms of the presentation or the feedback that we would give to the board.
And really, when the setup of this committee, it's the number one priority is meeting the financial policies that were laid out for the utility funds. That's, that was the number one priority of this committee. So that's why it's important, and such a big part of Pam's presentation is going through those policies so that you can see where those funds are coming in, so you're comfortable that the guidelines that were laid out, that the utilities are meeting those or close to those. If they're not, they have a reason why they're not.
Any more discussion on this item? Looking around, I'm still looking for a motion to recommend the tentative budget, approval of the tentative budget to the Board of Supervisors. Member Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend approval of the tentative budget as presented by staff with the minor adjustments that Pam outlined in the items that were not able to be presented as part of our packet. That we recommend that to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration.
Thank you, Member Scott. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Second by Member Johnston. Randy, go ahead.
Is that, I just want to clarify for the record, that's for the wastewater or sewer fund?
Yes, for the wastewater fund, not fish.
Thank you for the clarification. I have a motion and a second. I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the committee for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying, I keep stumbling over signify. Signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 4-0. Oops, with that, then we're moving on to item 2E, which is a discussion and possible action regarding tentative fiscal year 2020 water fund budget compliance with adopted financial policies and recommending that the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2020. Pam?
Thank you. With this fund, we have the same format. So operating revenue, starting there, once again, we have no increase in the usage rates included. We have an ongoing rate study for all the utility funds underway currently. Again, this is the fourth year out of 5 phase-in for the connection charge fees. Salaries and benefits again increased $216,000 over the estimated fiscal year 19. Again, this is primarily due to merit and benefit increases. Supplies and services increased by $308,000 over estimated fiscal year 19, and this is due approximately to an increase approximately of $239,000 in internal service charges and an increase in repairs and maintenance costs of about $75,000. And then the capital outlay plan for fiscal 2020 is about $3.2 million. And here is the 5-year planned overview of about $16.6 million over the next 5 years. And once again, there's a more detailed schedule in your packet. Moving on to the water fund financial policies and their compliance, our operating reserve goal, we're calculating at $1.3 million, and we should easily meet that. Our capital reserve goal of 2.1 should be easily covered with $3.5 million, and our system reinvestment funding goal of $3.5 million, again, should be easily covered with $3.5 million reserve. Debt to equity goal here is 50-50 again, as with all the funds, and this one we are not meeting currently at 52-48. Once again, this will correct itself over the next few years as we pay down the bonds. And then our debt service coverage goal of again is 1.0, and we met that with 1.3. Any questions on the water fund?
I'll ask you the same question I asked on the wastewater fund, and that's on the debt to equity ratio. Any of the future system reinvestment, is that going to negatively impact the debt to equity?
No, it should improve over time, for sure, yeah.
Bob?
Thank you. On the fiscal summary, Pam, I saw there's proposed charges for services were down for 2019-2020 versus 2018-2019 estimated. Do you know what's going on there?
With the water fund, it is primarily due to the ups and downs in usage, consumption, and we base our estimates on current actual dollars coming in, and we project, and we do it on a monthly, month by month basis, and we project it out. And so it's projected to be a little bit lower. It may come in higher, but it's, depends on how many people xeriscape their land, how much they're conserving, how much they're not conserving. But at current, we're not seeing the revenues coming in that we projected for 19. And so just based on our calculations and how it flows out, it's a little bit lower.
So that would pick up more efficient use of water.
Yeah. Currently, as the rates are structured currently, that's correct. There is a rate study that's ongoing right now, which may shift the design of the collection of fees, which could affect that. But this is what we currently project based on the current design and structure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions or comments? Randy?
I'm not sure if this is for you, Pam, or perhaps Eddie or Darren. The 5248 debt to equity, it's been going down, approaching the goal of 50-50. Is there any expectation of when it would be 50-50 or better?
I didn't bring last year's projections, but when we took out the extra debt that we took out this past year, we had calculated out a few years, if everything else was equal, how long it would take to get our debt to equity ratio back in line, and it was 2 to 3 years. All else held equal.
If I remember the debt that we took out earlier this year, and I apologize, Randy, for stepping in, but that was an opportunity to lower overall expenses, right? Interests and so on by refinancing, was that correct? So it was a
we
positive. It might have
refinanced.
impacted the debt to equity ratio, but ultimately it was a positive in the financial side for us.
Absolutely,
okay?
yes.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, I'll go back to staff for anything to add. Seeing none, just like last item, we'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval of the tentative budget and acknowledgement that it's substantially within the board's financial policies.
To clarify real quick, Pam, this fund is not within the board's financial policies, is that correct?
There is one financial policy which is not in compliance, and that is the debt to equity. Thank you.
Right,
There's
I just wanted to
debt to
clarify
equity
that for the
ratio is the
motion.
only policy that is not in compliance.
Member Bowling?
Mr. Chairman, I move to acknowledge that the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2020 is substantially in compliance with the adopted financial policies, and to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2020.
I have a motion by Member Bowling, or Vice Chairman Bowling, I should say. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Member Scott. I'll put it back for public comment. Seeing none, bring it back to the committee for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Motion passes 4-0. So that moves us forward to item 2F, which is discussion and possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2020 stormwater drainage fund budget's compliance with adopted financial policies, and recommending that the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative stormwater drainage fund budget for fiscal year 2020. Pam?
Thank you. Moving on with the stormwater utility fund. Again, as with the others, the operating revenue, and I'm just covering the highlights again, operating revenue does not include a rate increase. And the rate study that is currently in process for the utility funds includes the stormwater drainage rates. Salaries and benefits increased about $20,000 over estimated fiscal 19. Again, mostly due to merit and benefit increases. Supplies and services increased by about almost $16,000 over estimated 19, and this is primarily due to an increase of $65,000 in the internal service charges and a decrease in professional services of $50,000. The capital outlay plan for fiscal 2020 is about $555,000, which includes some equipment replacement and citywide minor improvements. This is the planned expenditures for capital over the next 5 years. It's for a total of $6.45 million. And then on our financial policies, again, we're looking good with our operating reserve goal of $103,000, almost $104,000. We are able to meet our capital reserve goal of $278,000 and our system reinvestment funding goal of $295,000. Again, on this fund, as well as with the water fund that we just talked about, we are not meeting our debt to equity ratio goal of 50-50. It's currently at 56-44. This is primarily due to the bond that we took out recently, and that should again right itself over the next few years as we pay down some of that bond. And our debt service coverage goal is 1.0, which we easily meet with 1.2. So once again, the debt to equity ratio is the only financial measurement here that we're not meeting in our policies. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Pam, you mentioned we took out a bond. I see there's a substantial increase in capital funding for 2021. Is that bond part of that? Bond that you just described?
The bond that we already received that bond. It was $4.875 million that we got. And the capital spending, are you saying? Okay, for 2021 does not include that. So that projected capital spending does not include monies from that bond. So we would need to secure financing in one way, shape, or form in order to move that project along. And in talking with, I'm sure the guys here can probably speak to it a little bit more than I could, but that particular project of $3.8 million, I believe, has been on the schedule for the past several years, and we haven't had the funding for it, so they've pushed it back from year to year. So once again, if we don't project the funding for that project, that it'll be pushed back again to the next year in hopes that we'll meet that eventually.
Thank you. I think I understand, but to say it, I guess, a different way, you made the comment that the debt to equity ratio will right itself over time, but if we were to follow the CIP that's presented, we're going to have to take on additional debt that will negatively impact the debt
Right,
to
so
equity in relation
there's
to
two
that
ways
goal.
that you can, the two ways that we're currently looking at exploring in terms of funding a project like this. The rate study that we have currently going on, if rates were structured in such a way that we're able to recover enough funds to fund that project through rates, that's ideal, right? That's what we always aim for with our financial policy goals. And the other would be, securing another bond, but that's not currently in the works right now.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just to clarify that, it's been a while since we've talked about it. When we put together a 5-year CIP, today you're looking at the current year, 2020. The remaining 4 years that are listed there, that is staff's projection of what is needed in that fund for the next 4 years. But in no way are we saying we're going to have the money to do that. But we're out there, we're planning that this is what should be done in terms of capital investment in this fund. So in all likelihood, we get to 2021, we're going to have probably $500,000 again next year. So we would move $3.3 million into 2022. And we just keep pushing that off until at some point we either decide to raise rates or sell a bond or both,
Okay.
or don't do the work.
Well, thank you both for that clarification. The basis of my question or just commentary is that the board, if I recall, the Board of Supervisors approved a rate increase on the stormwater fund, stormwater utility, I should say. I think it was last year, 2 years ago. And I guess I was trying to understand that it was a positive effect, certainly, on the fund with regards to the financial policies, but it's still not getting to where we need to be with regards to system reinvestment because we cannot fund those future reinvestment activities. Okay.
Yeah, your assessment is correct. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Anything else, Pam? No? With that, then I'll bring it back to the committee for any questions or comments on the stormwater fund. Member Scott?
Yeah, just a comment. This pretty well capsulizes, I think, the fact that stormwater is underfunded and we have a lot of real needs. Not that we can afford them necessarily, but that we hear a lot about every time we get major runoff events or major flooding. So keeping the need for stormwater improvements, I think, in the public's eye is important because it is underfunded. You know, people remember potholes, but they don't really remember drainage issues until they're underwater again. So I think, this demonstrates some progress, but certainly something we need to really continue to focus on, trying to come closer to addressing the real need.
Thank you for those comments, Bruce, and I echo your thoughts. Randy, Bob, anything to add? Randy?
If I could just add another observation to tack on to what Bruce said. The projected 2020 debt-to-equity ratio is 56-44, and the goal is 50-50. But that 56-44 is an improvement over the previous year of 58-42, which is an improvement over the previous year of 62-38. So we're going in a great direction. We're getting closer year by year to the 50-50. So I think that's staff to be complimented on.
Thank you for that, Randy. Anything else to add? No? With then, I'll go back to staff, see if you guys have anything to add. Seeing none, like the previous two, we'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval of the Stormwater Drainage Fund and its substantial compliance with adopted financial policies. Motion for that. Member Scott?
I'll make a motion,
Not
Mr.
everybody jump at
Chairman.
once here.
With regard to the stormwater funding, to make that clear, that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors the budget as presented, recognizing that we're making progress, but we still are not meeting all of our financial policy goals. But we're definitely making progress and emphasizing the need for continued interest and support by the board.
Duly noted. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Second by Member Johnston. I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, bring it back to the committee for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 4-0. So that moves us on to item 2G, which is manager's report. Darren, this is information only.
Yes, thank you very much, Darren Schultz. For the record, I'll kick this off. I'm gonna leave it mostly open to the water and wastewater manager. You'll remember that a year ago I was here and was presenting and asking for your input into a reorg over at Public Works, the department. So that's it's already been a year. It went into effect July 1. The managers that are going to be talking here today are very much part of that reorganization and very pleased with the direction we're going. I think it's the best it's ever been in terms of management of the utility funds and ownership and looking into the future. They've done a great job of looking under rocks and just looking towards where we need to go, and I feel like we're in really good hands there. So just wanted to touch off with that comment. Then I'll just turn it over to Eddie and Andy to talk a little bit about their stormwater, wastewater, and water, and a little bit of direction about where they're planning to go this next year.
Thank you, Darren.
I'll start, again, for the record, Andy Hummel, wastewater utility manager. For current work, I was going to start there for this update. At our treatment plant, water resource reclamation facility, a lot of work going on with our Phase 2B construction project. That's still on track to be finished into this year. Currently, they're finishing the odor control and associated electrical work at Headworks. So once that's in place, it should start smelling a little better as you drive by. But they're also rapidly working on prepping the site for paving. They should be doing that in April as the asphalt plants get backed up to speed. So if you plan on making a visit, let us know and we'll tell you which corner of the plant we're parking in that day. Also at the plant, NDEP has finally pushed to issue our permits that we've been waiting on for a few years. We're anticipating the first one, which is our discharge permit for the plant itself to our reuse system. That one is currently under internal review at NDEP. We don't anticipate any big changes from NDEP based on the conversations we've had, so that's good
Is this
news.
just a re-up, so to speak, of an existing permit?
Yeah, it's an every 5-year permit that they issue it. We also have a permit for the reuse system for our Brunswick Canyon Reservoir, where that seeps into the ground. That seepage that comes out at the bottom, roughly 200-300 acre feet a year, that actually makes it to the Carson River, that is permitted. So that permit is gonna come second. They didn't anticipate any big changes there, but they wanted to get the plant one first. They felt that was the more important. We agreed. I have a couple of construction projects going on out in the street. We have one on Ann Street that's currently underway, just replacing some old line, getting that taken care of. And then Empire Lift Station, that one, we awarded it about a month ago at the supervisors. They will likely begin work in June. We have some long lead procurement items, some of the electrical stuff that's taken a while. So that one, the crews are very happy to see that one finally get taken care of. And then as has been mentioned a few times, we're currently working on our rate study refresh with Far West Engineering. They're currently gathering data to update the model. They'll be back at the next meeting here with their initial results is the anticipation. So that one we're anticipating the water and wastewater will largely be just, it's been 5 years, or reload the revenues, the expenses, things like that, and see where we're at in that model. Any minor adjustments need to be made. The stormwater one, we're anticipate that one will be a little more work with, is that one equitable? Is there some adjustments that need to be made? Since that's so new and we're learning how it's been implemented, if there's any changes that need to be made. So on the storm drain side, for construction work, doing some pipe at behind the DMV. It should start in April. And then a little bit of work on Schultz Drive, also beginning in April. Some pipe work. And then our big reuse project for the year, we reworked the pump station at Eagle Valley. That's been completed and is up to speed, and working with the operator there to make sure they're trained on how to use that moving forward. Also under current, we have one vacancy currently. We had an operator 3 at the plant that left for greener pastures in Lyon County, or so he hopes, I guess, but sometimes that's more fertilizer on the lawn. So we interviewed for that position yesterday, had a couple of very qualified candidates, so looking to fill that soon. And then for next year, for our CIP, we have an electrical assessment at the treatment plant, looking at some of the older stuff that wasn't part of the upgrades in the last phases, some of our older switchboards, things like that, that yes, they're still well functional, but some of those parts are, you can find them on eBay, basically. They don't stock them at the centers, so may need to prioritize what needs to be replaced next in that. 3 projects for the collection system throughout the city, just old pipe getting replaced. And then another lift station to get rebuilt, the one on Riverview, or the Riverview one we call Riverview. That one, it's a pretty deep lift station, wet well, dry well type system that the guys are confined space entry every time they go into, and it has settled just a little bit over the years, and whenever they pull a pump out or something, there's a lot of prying and chains and hoists and various stuff to get everything to line back up, and invariably causes some motor vibrations and stuff. So we're gonna basically redo that one, go to a sump type system. And then in terms of budget, one of the big ones we're looking at for the professional services this coming year, our budget, we reduced it somewhat compared to last year. We don't have the rate study, things like that were in this current budget that are ongoing, but a reuse master plan in fiscal year 20, part of that we were able to get funded 50 grand worth by the Carson Water Subconservancy District, so that helped us reduce that as well. And as far as, that's what I had for an update on the wastewater side.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, any questions?
I do have one for you. You mentioned the reservoir permit. Is there any, do you think that permit, your crystal ball tell you, is that permit, you think, going to come with any strings attached that we're going to have to try to treat or line the reservoir or something along those lines? Anything different than what we've been operating under? I
Yeah,
guess?
from the conversations we've had with NDEP, they don't anticipate that at this time. So we're excited to see that in writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were actually leaning more towards they may be able to relax some of the sampling, which is a once a month hike down a canyon for the crews. So that would be nice.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions? Bruce?
Yeah, a couple things. Andy, where's the Eagle Valley lift station?
The pump station is up by the upper pond on the course. It's
Okay.
for the pressurizing the system on the course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question, does the rate study include connection fees?
We were gonna look at them a little bit, but where they're already indexing and everything,
Yeah,
don't
we're
anticipate
in
that
the,
changing.
in the
a
process,
big
but
amount, yeah,
by the time it comes out, we'll only have one more year, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, because we're still in the escalating phase, the phase in of it. We didn't think we'd spend too much time on it just now, but maybe a cursory overview if our projections are headed in the right direction is what we thought.
For what it's worth, it might be helpful if one of their recommendations going forward is that it be revisited at a time, at an appropriate time. I just worry about the fact that once this is done, everybody's going to want to forget about rates. And it might be helpful to have that recommendation for staff to go forward or this committee to go forward in a year or two.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob?
On that seepage permit, I'm just curious, I'd heard about this issue before, but is that ever been in the dream capital budget as far as, and if so, what are we looking at there? Is that huge money to reline that pond out there?
Yeah, we last looked at it in the early 2000s, and at that time, it was about a $30 million price to line that. A big part of it is we use that reservoir every winter for storage, so it never actually gets dry. And even if we were to dry it out, we have a month or two maybe of time frame. So we'd really be looking at having to build a second stored reservoir somewhere else to give us the time, or splitting this one in half somehow was the other option that was put out to be able to line that.
Thank you.
Randy?
I wasn't going to bring this up until the next agenda item, but Bob tricked the switch for me. Has there been any quantification of the impact of inflow or infiltration on additional operating costs at the plant?
Yeah, into the piping system. Reducing it actually makes our life a little more difficult. It's kind of a double-edged sword. That extra water, you have to pump it through. As you reduce that has actually reduced the amount of effluent that we have. So as we've seen in the last few years, especially in the drought, our outflow from the plant is down, trending downward somewhat, and largely because of, replacing pipes in the street that leak, things like that, which creates less effluent to send to our customers. So that's one of the things we want to look at with the reuse master plan, is that balance moving forward. We do anticipate that as growth continues, that curve will move upwards.
So that will be a part of the your water reuse master plan?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, we saw from roughly, early 2000s till now, our flow to the plant or outflow from the plant has actually decreased 5% or so. Not huge, but you'd expect with growth over that time, it should have went up. But it's the difference in I&I as well as people, low flow fixtures, things like that.
So the solution to pollution is dilution?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Any other questions for Andy? Seeing none. Thank you, Andy. Eddie, I guess you're up.
Yeah, good afternoon. Eddie Collieri, Water Utility Manager, again, for the record. And I thought I'd start off with the CIP for fiscal year '20. So we have, as you can see in your list, in your package, I'm going to go over the projects that are kind of the main projects, and then a lot of these are ongoing replacements of existing infrastructure, such as the pressure reducing stations, the pumps and motors, vehicles. So I won't be talking much about those, but I have a few projects that I wanted to kind of highlight for you. Under the tank maintenance, we're looking at painting Gonai Canyon tank. Sorry, there's a Gonai tank and then a Gonai Canyon tank. The Gonai Canyon tank, it's full of rust. It needs to be, it's in desperate need of coating, recoating. So they would go in, sandblast it, get rid of all the loose rust on the girders, on the roof joists, and and go through the whole tank inside and outside and recoat it. It's we get a little bit of water quality issues due to that tank in that area in the north, and it's in desperate repair or need of repair. The other one I'd like to highlight is Prison Hill Booster Pump Station. That's in the list. This project's aimed at, modernization, simplicity of operation, and a big one is safety. So there's the project solves the solution of there's two different booster pump stations feeding Shadow Hills and Desert Mountain pressure zones. And those are the two neighborhoods to the north and south of Prison Hill Tank, for kind of geographic reference. Those two pressure zones are served by two separate underground booster pump stations. And they're pretty unique. I've never been inside of them, but I know how they're built, and they need to be replaced as far as a safety, working on the pumps in those confined spaces. You have to go through all your confined space issues every time you get into them. This new pump station will be above ground. It'll be a modern pump station. It'll have more redundancies for the two zones, and there'll only be one pump station to serve both of them, both of the zones off of the Prison Hill tank. So it's a really good project. I know it's been a long time in the making for the operators. They've been looking to get rid of those underground pump stations for a while now. So they're really happy about that project that we're working on. There's also water line replacement projects in the CIP, and one of them is Fairview from Roop to Carson. Airport Road water main replacement. That one's, we have a lot of saddles blowing off of the, services blowing off of the pipeline in that section. The saddles are all rusted out. We have, I believe, really aggressive soils in that area that are causing just damage to the services. And that one's a big area of concern for us. Another project we have is a water main crossing at Arrowhead and Gonai intersection. And we're doing a repaving job in that area and a street job there. And adding that cross to that project will kind of make things a little more efficient as far as contracting goes and street closures go, since we have to close streets off already in that area. It's a deep water cross that had issues. We fixed the issues, but it's a problem that if something were to happen there, it would be pretty catastrophic as far as getting it fixed. So we want to get in there and get that that area cleaned up. Another project on the list is 10th and Curry Street water main replacement. And then I guess moving on from the CIP, moving on to other updates in the water system, we've recently kicked off a water meter analysis study with a company called Valor Water. And what they're going to be looking at is our commercial. We started off with a test study to see if their software could help us determine areas where water meters are running slower than they should be, which means that we're not capturing revenues from those meters like we should be. So it affects your rates and also lets you know where you need to start replacing water meters. So it's a big statistical analysis they do. We're currently just kicking it off. We're looking at just to start with the commercial meters to see if there is an issue with our meters that are going on, 10 or 15 years old now. So that study's just kicked off, and looking forward to the results. Maybe sometime in October, we'll have that study completed. Actually, no, we're going to do, sorry, take that back. It's going to be actually a whole year-long study. So they're going to look at 5 years past data, and then they're going to look at our monthly data for a whole year and compare and contrast and see if the trends are trending downward as far as what they're collecting. So we also have kicked off another engineering study on the Quill water treatment plant. As some of you probably know, and I think I've discussed it here in the past, but for the new members, we've had issues with water quality on our surface water supplies, both on Ash Canyon, our Marlette Hobart surface water supplies have had basically organic materials that we can't treat at our water treatment plant facility at Quill. So we're looking at a study on how we can better utilize facilities that we have, or what facilities we'd have to add in the future to fully treat that water to today's, water quality standards, which are all the time increasing. There's disinfection byproducts issues that we're seeing, and for the time being, we're taking certain sources that we can treat, and certain sources that we can't treat, we're just not using. And the big one is the Marlette water source. We're currently not treating that water due to the organics in it. So there's been other issues popping up long-term too. Surface water treatment rule through the EPA is another obstacle we're battling, and we're looking at this study to kind of be a holistic look at how can we solve all these water quality issues we have in one shot. And maybe there's ways we can better utilize the facilities that we have in that area to do that. But we needed a study to look at all the documentation and give us a few good numbers to go off of. So that's currently being pursued, and Far West is doing that study out of Reno. We're also looking at re-drilling well 3 over on Winnie Lane, and that's going to hopefully double the capacity of that well. Again, just getting us to our keeping us on track for our planning level growth. So that's another big project that we're currently undergoing. Another update or an interesting analysis we just did was Dan Stuckey, our city engineer, pursued a water use analysis with Atkins out of Reno, looking at on the parcel level water use demands for the whole buildable, build out look at the city. It's a really good study. We can make it available to you if you'd like to look at it. It corroborates all of our other studies that we've done pretty nicely, just general growth rates, looking at general growth rates. But this one looks at each parcel, how much water that or what could be built on that parcel and what the water demand would be. So we have a nice way to look at different zones. We can incorporate it into our water model. There's a lot of different things we can do with it as a living model sort of thing. On the staff side of things, we're undergoing succession planning currently. I don't know if you know Rip Palmer. He's been a mainstay of the water system for 20, 25 years. He's retiring in July. So I'm currently working on his replacement, and what that looks like is a long-term plan. We also have Nick Brown, who's our distribution foreman, has a few more years left, thankfully. And then Brandon Mattison is our production foreman, and he has about 3 years left. And I'm playing the lottery all the time. I don't know about you guys. So who knows there? But that wraps up my what I wanted to update you all on, and take any questions.
Thank you, Eddie. I got to ask the 30,000-foot question. How much is our water demand, the study that looked at the parcel level usage, how much would our demand increase at build-out over what we have today?
It looks at, as far as a max day demand standpoint, it's 29 MGD. And, that's without any contingency. So we'd like to go 20% above that to just have contingency factor, and that would push it, 34 MGD.
And right now, our max day is mid-20s?
We're actually, the last year, we were at 19, 2018 calendar year. We can
significant
supply
increase.
about 24 MGD with everything going full blast. So we're in good shape right now, but we're looking to, not get behind on that long-term goal. So, well 3 is a good example of how we can start to kind of incrementally get up to that with other projects,
Does the city have water rights in the bank, so to speak, to cover that?
Yeah, we do. It said the study projected we needed 16,000 acre feet total water rights, and we have 18,000, plus or minus, 18,648, to be exact.
Plus or minus?
Plus or minus. So, yeah. So that's on an overall look of it. How those all interreact is, yeah. So,
Thank you, Eddie.
looking good.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Eddie, could I just get you to give an update on the east-west project? And then maybe
yeah.
also just talk a little bit about the discolored water that we have going on right now.
Yeah.
just For the
Good
public.
point. So, interrelated too. The east-west project is happening this summer, and that's the final completion of our transmission main from town of Minden, Douglas County, to our Quill water treatment plant. And the important thing to note for that last piece is, right now, the transmission main, it stops at Washington, but along the way, it goes into the system. It fills Prison Hill tank, it fills the 4880 zone, and that's all great. But what we want it to do is get to Quill, so then we can get it up to Ash Canyon tanks, and then from there, it can actually seep through the entire zones. We can get that water to all the different zones. So it's much more of a true transmission main, getting it into our highest part of our city so that we can get it easily into the other zones that also need the water. So that's a big project that's coming along. And we had a water main hit by a contractor doing a sewer main project on around Curry and Ann Street.
This happened to be yesterday?
That was yesterday.
Oh, that would make sense for my office.
That's right. Yeah, you probably felt that. And interestingly enough, the transmission main, which is near there, transported that cloudy water farther out than we would have expected. So we're tracking that. We've sent out a lot of notices, code reds, taking a lot of customer calls. And it's looking like it's clearing up right now. We just didn't expect it to be over, a full 24 hours. Usually they clear up in a few hours. It just happened to be with the transmission main being close and it feeding that area, it moved that water throughout the city pretty quickly. So,
The cloudy water is due to stirring up
Right.
minerals within the pipes, not exterior getting into the pipes. So we just want to be clear about that. There's nothing harmful about the water. It's cloudy, but it's not harmful to the health of anybody.
yeah, it was similar to just a high flow, like a high flushing event that stirred up the water. So we got it fixed. It's all back and running now.
Thank you for that, Eddie. Any questions or comments? Bruce?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear about well number 3. I think the redundancy and the benefit of redrilling the wells, and I see in the capital improvement request that there's a multi-year request for well, and I think that's really important. If we can sustain that and hopefully keep it funded, that'll be real helpful.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob, I saw you had a question.
Yeah, curious, Eddie, as far as the Marlette Hobart system, is Story County using it?
Yeah, they are. That's their only source of water. They're such a small portion of the, the side stream of that whole source.
But
They rely on it. They have a different treatment system up there that can handle the water that's produced from those reservoirs.
Okay.
And that's what's different from our treatment plant.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Randy?
Eddie, I'm intrigued by the planned use by parcel. I assume it's taken the parcel or the master plan uses by parcels. Would that also be able to be utilized during permit approvals by knowing the impact and if there's going to have to be any system enhancements?
Yeah, I think that's a real powerful point of the whole study is, seeing if there's a zone changing or, what we had planned for that parcel and if there's a major change to it, then, that's part of the discussion that would have to be have. But, it gives us a good baseline for each parcel's use based on their zoning.
Any other comments? Seeing none, anything else to add?
Nope.
No? This is an information item. I assume we still need public comment, is that correct? Seeing nothing else to add by staff, we'll ask for public comment. Seeing no public comment, And considering its information, we'll move on to item 3, which is future agenda items. Does this committee have anything they would like to see added to a future agenda?
There was mention, Mr. Chairman, of the rate study, and I presume that'll be an agenda item when it's appropriate or when it's available.
Chairman, if I may, so the next meeting is May 28th at 1 PM. And on my list, I have to bring before you the final budgets, which is basically what we did today, except any changes that happen between now and then. And then also a briefing on the utility rate refresh. So we'll know closer to that time where we are and what we'll be able to present. I don't know if there will be any decision points at that meeting or if it will just be information as to where we are at that date. But I'd be happy to add anything else to that meeting if there's anything on your mind.
We heard one from Member Scott. Anything else to add? No? I don't have anything to add at this time. You did mention, and I don't know if this is the right spot on the agenda to do so, but you did mention future meetings. And I wanted to have that just discussion, make sure that's out in the record as well. So perhaps, well, we can do it now. What do you think? I had, just looking at the minutes from the last meeting, you'd mentioned the May 28th meeting at 1 PM. Following that, we have a September 24 meeting at 1 PM. And following that, we have a November 18 meeting at 1 PM, all of those in this room.
Yes, and that's very good clarification. I think it would be appropriate with the rate refresh going on. There's going to be likely a need to have additional meetings between May and September, but it's too early to tell and/or project when those might be.
Understood. If there's nothing else to add for future agenda items, I will ask for public comment on that. You get to comment under public comment?
I don't know when else to comment.
Okay.
I made a grievous error earlier when I was presenting the URAP program, and I just want to apologize profusely. It was not a board member who donated the $1,000. It was the prior committee member, Andy Engelman. And I just want to thank her again. That was incredible.
Well, thank you for that clarification, and we thank Andy for that very generous donation and her service on this committee over the last few years, too.
Mr. Chair, I also have one item of public comment to respond to Mr. Scott's request for the federal poverty guidelines. For 2019, for a one-person household, the poverty guideline is $12,490. That's 100%. And for a family of 4, the poverty guideline is $25,750.
Thank you for that update. I think that moves us on to the final public comment of the meeting. And before going to the public, I wanted to do this at the beginning of the meeting, and due to my rough start, I did not get that in. But we received some commentary from a citizen of Carson City, Martin Snodgrass. Andy, could you, Council, I'm not sure how to do this. Should we read this into the record or just acknowledge that we received the communication and make it part of the?
It's a short statement. I'd be happy to read it into the record if you'd like me to.
Take it away.
This is a public comment from Martin Snodgrass. My name is Martin Snodgrass. I live on Kingsley Lane in Carson City. My wife and I are retired and have done a number of things to reduce our water consumption. 1, xeriscaped our yard to remove 8 sprinklers, added concrete work to replace grass. 2, put in a tankless water heater. 3, put in 2 low-flow toilets. 4, put in an electric water heater in the kitchen to reduce water flow to get hot water. 5, we also travel quite a bit and don't use any water or sewer while we are gone. Our sewer bill has us paying as much as our neighbors that 4, 5, or 6 people living there. I have senior friends where there is only one person living there. They are also stuck with an unfair sewer charge. Most of the people I talk to have drastically reduced their water consumption to keep their bill down, but the sewer cost can't be changed by reducing water consumption. I want to recommend a reduction in the sewer costs for people like us. Thank you.
I appreciate you reading that into the record. With that item ended, I will ask for public comment once more. Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
One comment. Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I presume it would make sense to refer this letter also to our rate consultant, just as a item of concern. And presumably, this is a recently dated letter. It doesn't have a date on it, so thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Still looking for that motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Motion, a second?
Second.
A seconded by Bruce. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We adjourn. Thank you.